we are here today with Liz Oplatka, Gateway sort of leadership and org development guru. You're also an expert in coaching and org strategy. She's been with Gateway for 8 years, and I think maybe 3 to 4 years with WCEDA and the Fundamentals class. I'm not 100% sure.
I work with a division of Gateway called Business and Workforce Solutions. We are the consulting end of Gateway. Businesses either send folks to us for training and development, and we have lots of every technical field Gateway touches. And if we don't do it, we will find someone for you who will, and we'll organize it for you. So the businesses will send folks to us, or we go into businesses. So I spend most of my time when in the pre-COVID age, not in my home office, but out in businesses. We've been doing this program with WCEDA for, yes, I guess it is easily 3 years now. And I've been doing the program overall for 8 years. We've been doing it for Oconnoshare Area Business Alliance during that time as well. We found a lot of success with it. So what we do is a very brief introduction to leadership and supervision for folks who are new to leadership, folks who are having some problems with their skills, folks who you see as being high potential for leadership moving forward. We have leads, supervisors, managers. I've had executives of companies join us, and folks just from, if you're in manufacturing, from the floor. Your position in the organization doesn't really matter so much, but it is a very brief kind of introduction. We do this because we have a really strong business case to make. I'd like to share that with you just a second here. Here we go. Okay. I'd really like to hear more about all of you. So when I'm working with businesses, a lot of the time you hear about things like leadership and supervision, organizational development, coaching, and folks think that's kind of granola, kind of crunchy. As a friend of mine used to put it, a little too Marin County for me. In fact, I only work with evidence-based strategies. Okay, there's absolutely nothing touchy-feely about human behavior. I often say, I don't care about your feelings, I care about your behavior, right? My background is organizational psychology. I also have a counseling degree. I'm a board certified coach. But before that, I have 15 or so years in management, from frontline management, all the way through CEO of a publishing company in the form of being the editor-in-chief of a publishing company. A lot of folks who we begin to talk with say, well, I'm a bean counter and I want to know that there are numbers behind this. And so my answer to that is, you don't have any beans if you don't have sound leadership. There are lots of organizations that are very, very good at what they do technically, but where the failure comes in is in not acknowledging that ultimately what we're dealing with are human beings here. So the business case for leadership development is very, very strong. I don't do trust falls or walking on thin ice or anything like that. Really, what we're talking about are some facts that are tough for us to deal with, but are true. According to a survey that's been taken by Gallup for, I think, at least the last 25 years, called The State of the American Workforce, only 29% of American workers are fully engaged in their work. And what's worse is that roughly 18% are actively disengaged. I trained at Gallup in becoming a strengths coach. And while I was there, I said, yes, but this is a Gallup poll. You call people at home and you say, do you work? And folks say yes. And then you ask them questions that lead to this conclusion. But isn't it true that some companies are more engaged or less engaged with others? And what they told me was, yes, that's true. But by and large, as we go into organizations, these statistics hold true. So get all of your employees together, lop off more than a third of them. Basically what's left, that's your engaged workforce. And that's terrifying because you're paying all of them, right? According to the Center on Creative Leadership, which is an organization that does work in leadership, so I want to be honest about that, but they've done a great deal of research over the years. Organizations that prioritize leadership development see 73% greater employee retention, and I can tell you that for a fact that that's true based on what I've seen in the many organizations we've worked with over the years. A 67% increase in collaboration among employees. But this one is really interesting. A lot of folks will say, bring us your technical training. And then afterward, they come back to our technical trainers and they say, nobody's using it. And then they say, have you talked to Liz? And the reason for this is because you don't see the increase in business results up to 66% increase in business results based on the original intent of the training unless folks are engaged in their work. They will simply ignore the training, do what they've been doing all of these years. So if that's at all if that's at all helpful in understanding why we do what we do. Well, welcome everyone. I wanted to share with you the sorts of things that we cover during this program. So when ultimately there are 4 areas that we cover in detail during the program, and this is because really when it comes to if there's a leader's job description for leadership, if there's this idea that leadership in and of itself is a career choice, then there are really 4 things that we cover. And the first of these is personal excellence, also known as leading as being and not doing. And this is developing self-awareness in the leader, understanding how one's preferences, values, and purpose relate to the way they relate to others at work. Whether they have, for example, a personal development plan, or whether they can help their employees with a personal development plan, the sort of thing that Heather was talking about earlier. And also how to exercise collaborative leadership and understand that being collaborative in leadership is a great strength and actually tougher to do than being highly directive in leadership. And the next of these is aligning, and we refer to this also as performance excellence. And this is aligning oneself with their organization, their company mission, vision, values, strategy, and goals. And also helping the people who report to them and others within the organization do the very same thing. How to orient themselves toward internal and external customers, but also understanding how performance communication, performance measures, and such things as goal setting affect the way we lead. The next is communication excellence. Everyone always thinks of this one, and we think of communication, and we think of communication as being so broad and vague. We need better communication around here. But when I ask people, what does that mean? They have a difficult time answering that question for me. So really what we're talking about are critical thinking skills, how the way we read, write, listen, and speak. Are we listening for the meaning of what the other person is saying? Are we finding that meaning? Are we sharing our meaning with others? When we offer feedback, are we trying to stop people, start people, or are we really trying to create momentum for our organization? Teaching people the differences between coaching and mentoring and how to do both with their employees. And even seeking the truth in their organizations. I have a story of a company where I had been working inside of this company 3-4 days a week, working with various teams inside the company. And they said, Liz, you can't come in for the next 3 weeks. I said, why not? And they said, well, because our CEO is coming from whatever country it was that held their location. I think it's somewhere in Europe. And we need to clean this place up. It's a mess. And the employees look terrible. We're going to get them in uniforms. There's all this stuff everywhere. And we're going to bring in semis and load it on the semis and park the semis way out back so nobody can see it. And I said, don't you think your CEO needs to know that you've got a ragtag team, that you're having trouble with your maintenance, and that you don't have places to put things? And they said, oh, he doesn't want to know that. Right? So it's this idea that what we want to do is seek truth with our employees. The next of these is collaboration, and that's team excellence. And so this is how to form and maintain really effective teams in your organization by doing such things as providing servant leadership, making yourself the servant of the workforce as opposed to the director of the workforce. How to dedicate group time to process and quality improvement, how to make that time available, and how to engage in an environment where people are always teaching to one another and learning from one another. Um, and so these are questions that you can ask yourself about, well, what's our current state of leadership? And so every program that we have will, within these a total of 18 weeks that we do, will address those skills. So I've got some questions about how, how this works, and what we can do to do things like guarantee results, and obviously we can't do that. um our What we can do is to tell you that there is significant impact, at least this is what businesses have been telling us, after employees participate in the training. They tend to pick up some specific skills. We offer a lot of tips and tricks and things like that that people can use. Some specific things like assessments in the areas of teamwork, in the way we use our energy at work. We used to call that time management. Um, Techniques for doing things like prioritizing our work, or for understanding our communication styles and the communication styles of others, or the conflict styles of ourselves and the conflict styles of others, that they can take for free back into their organizations and use. So we see a lot of that. A lot of what we see is raised awareness, and the use of various tools. So I think that those are the things that we see the most often. Um, so if we look then on what's the return on investment for that, the return on investment is that you now have a higher level of awareness in your organization. You have folks who have some techniques for dealing with live situations. You also have folks who are now significantly more curious about making themselves, their teams, and their organizations more effective. And I figure at 2 hours a week for 18 weeks, that's quite a bit to accomplish.
Liz, if I could jump in here, I think the way that you've done this too, people can, it may sound like a big commitment, 18 weeks, but we've had people they're in 6 week components, 1, 2, and 3, or modules. And you really don't need one, there's not like a prerequisite. You could start at module 3, it's just they have different topics that are covered. But we've had people that take one and then, they skip a few because of time constraints or whatever, and they come back and do the others eventually. And I would just say we've had, as you mentioned, I mean, we've had, Brunk Industries and Prop Shaft and Geneva Supply and Lake Lawn Lodge, Precision Plus. I mean, we've had just a real mix of companies that have come through, and they've found it to be very useful and very reasonable. And what our reviews and stuff is just, it's been very beneficial. So I hope everyone on the call here will, consider trying one of these upcoming classes or sessions.
Yeah, the folks drop in and out. They take one and then they come back later and take another set. That's why we split them up into groups of 12 hours, once a week. Right now, we're doing everything virtually. Honestly, it doesn't seem to have had a whole lot of negative or any negative effect. In fact, a lot of businesses are preferring that because folks then don't have to travel. And we make all of the materials available to folks. They can have them to keep moving forward. Just to give you an idea of what a group of 6 topics might look like, we try to group them together a little bit by subject area. So For example, we have one called Leading and Communicating, and in that one, we look at that leader's job we were just talking about, as well as what are the qualities of leadership and how do I develop my qualities of leadership and how do I come to understand them. Um, Understanding some basics about human behavior so that we can deal more effectively with human behavior, in a program called It's All About the Humans. We also look at supervisory communication. We take a look at looking at the organization. It's called My Dysfunctional Work Family. It's one of my prides and joys. And what we do is we look at the psychology of the workplace in comparison to the psychology of the family, and particularly things like birth order, right? A new person joins your organization and all of a sudden everything just explodes, right? And that's because everybody's jockeying for position. So, just like there's the only child who becomes the eldest child, right? There's the middle child who feels trapped. And the very same sorts of things happen inside of organizations. We do programming on how to onboard employees with the least negative impact on things like safety, quality, and productivity. We do a program on how to deliver more formal performance feedback in the form of a review, how to set goals with employees. In a program called Doing the Right Thing, we have a program called From Colleague to Boss that talks about what do you do when you're promoted and your colleagues aren't, right? Or you come in new to an organization and everyone isn't as welcoming as you would like them to be. Prioritizing work and looking at how I use my time at work, which is really more about how we use our energy at work. In these things, we offer things like assessments. I have an energy assessment that I share with folks where they can figure out where their team is. We have a conflict assessment. We have an ethics assessment that we use. We also do programming on things like the laws regarding harassment, discrimination, things like that. We also look at diversity in the workforce and how to deal with that, and how to build and measure employee engagement inside of an organization, how to find and keep the best possible employees, and I think I mentioned conflict, and of course change leadership. So those are the sorts of things we cover. We are covering them very, very, very quickly. These are whole areas of study and practice, obviously. But like I said, what you get is some raised awareness, and you get some tools that your folks can use moving forward. And perhaps what this is a model for engagement with your organization with Gateway moving forward. And for a lot of the organizations we work with, that's exactly what happens. So some of these companies we're talking about are companies that we wind up working with over a period of time on some very specific things. We can also, working with WCEDA, we can do this program just for your company, which is actually what we're doing with Geneva Supply right now. It does have to be this program because otherwise we have a special arrangement through the state. WCEDA is a not-for-profit organization, and therefore you get a much lower rate as a result of that. And of course we lose, as Gateway, our job is to lose money. So we lose money on everything that we do, but we can do a program like this, do this program for you inside of your company on your schedule without any problem at all.